And welcome to Brussels for Talking Europe. I'm at the European Development Days for an exclusive interview with the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. She's also the Vice President of the European Commission, Federica Mogherini. Thank you so much for being with us on France 24. We're at the European Development Days. It's an event hosted by the Commission, an opportunity to reflect on development policy. The Commission has invited a series of actors, policymakers, international organizations, as well as NGOs. Meanwhile, we know that migration has become a tremendous challenge for Europe. Thousands of Africans trying to reach Europe for a better life. It's a sign that the issue is not solved, far from it. Does EU development policy need a total rethink?
First of all, we need to understand, as Europeans, that this is not charity. This is an investment. And the things you said on migration show it very clearly. The best possible way of dealing with migration and with asylum seekers is investing in development, in long-term perspectives for the people where they live, where they were born, which means preventing crisis, dealing with wars and conflicts, and offering economic and social possibilities in all continents. Also means preventing major natural disasters. Paris will host a very important event at the end of the year on climate change. Also, this is an investment in our own security, and it's also a piece of the puzzle when we deal with migration and asylum seekers. So we need to have the bigger picture and to be consistent with our decisions. We decided just recently with the ministers of the European Union member states to recommit to the 0.7 objective, the goal of our GDP for development aid, which is going to be very important, not enough, but very important, to show a serious sign of understanding that this is an investment for our future, not only for the future of our fellow Africans or Latin Americans or Asian friends, but also for us Europeans. It will be a better world, the one our children will live in.
We talk about migration. Recently, EU foreign ministers took an unprecedented decision. They want to launch naval operations to crack down on people smugglers, human traffickers, basically, who abuse the situation of refugees. Is it really a solution to solve the problem?
No, there's not one single piece of the puzzle that will give us the picture. There's no magic wand. But we can be brave enough and consistent enough to put in place different pieces of policies. Development cooperation, work with countries of origin and transit, cooperation with our friends in Africa, the African Union, with the Arab League, with Arab countries, and policies inside the European Union to welcome those that deserve international protection. We have also to take our own responsibilities. In this picture, which is much broader than just a naval operation, we also took the decision to establish an operation, an EU operation, to make it impossible or more difficult for the smugglers, for these criminal networks, to make money out of people's desperation. If we see hundreds of people dying at sea, after the minutes of silence, we also have to take coherent decisions, even if they're difficult. So for sure, alone, a naval operation will not solve everything, but will contribute significantly to dismantle the business model of the smugglers.
Let's move
and in this way save lives. This is the main point for us. And also the naval operation will go in that direction.
Let's move to another big issue for you, the situation in the Middle East. You recently visited Israel and Palestine. You urged both sides to relaunch peace talks. How optimistic are you that the ultra-conservative government of Benjamin Netanyahu will listen to these calls?
You know, optimism is not a parameter for me. Otherwise, one would stop doing this job, probably. What you have to do is trying to find ways, difficult ways, to restart or to encourage positive steps. Especially in the Middle East, today we've been now for 1 year without any kind of talks, without any kind of peace process, and the lack of a peace process itself is risking a lot in the Middle East. Daesh is spreading in the region. Gaza is still in very difficult conditions. The level of frustration, both among the Palestinians and the Israelis, is huge. We need to rebuild an international and regional framework for negotiations. I was, as you said, visiting the Middle East last week. I was there. That was my first visit when I took office in November, in Gaza, in Ramallah, and in Jerusalem, meeting all sides to try and say, Europe is there. Europe is there to support financially or to support politically, diplomatically, any kind of will to find a solution that gives two states in the region and stability and peace for both. We're working on that, not alone, together with our American friends, together with the Arab countries that are part of the regional picture, with the UN, with Russia. It's a difficult way, but I'm not completely negative about that.
In one of your first interviews, you said that one of your dreams would be to see an independent Palestinian state before the end of your term. Is that feasible? It's a dream, you said, but is that something that is possible?
You know, I believe that in the Middle East, there is no status quo. Everything is moving day by day, and the situation is not getting better. On the contrary, it's getting worse. So if we do not act to make the two states a possibility, a real possibility, one in which people can believe, both on the Israeli and on the Palestinian side, things are not simply going to stay as they are. They're going to get worse. So I believe that the alternative we have is not among keeping things as they are or doing something good. It's either we do something good or things will go much, much worse. That's why I believe we have a chance for peace in the region.
Federica Mogherini, you earlier mentioned Daesh. As you know, ministers from 20 countries gathered in Paris on Tuesday to discuss a strategy for fighting the Islamic State group. The meeting was co-hosted by the French and Iraqi foreign ministers. We're going to talk about this in a moment, but first, let's watch our report.
Airstrikes are not enough. The talks in Paris aim to draw a new strategy against the Islamic State group after recent setbacks in Iraq and Syria.
We learned a lot from Ramadi, and it's important that we understand the lessons that came out of that particular fight and that we seek to apply the lessons learned to the implementation of the strategy.
Islamic State militants' recent capture of Ramadi, the capital of Anbar province, dealt a heavy blow to Prime Minister Haider Abadi's government. As well as boosting its army's capabilities, Baghdad needs to draw support from Sunni tribes while reining in powerful Shiite militias whose military muscle it depends on.
If we want to boost the withdrawal of the Islamic State militant group politically, the entire Iraqi population should be involved.
The Paris meeting comes a day after an Islamic State militant killed about 40 policemen in a suicide bomb attack near Samarra.
Are we losing the battle against the Islamic State?
It's a difficult battle. We knew it and we still know it. The main point is partnership here. It's not the West against Daesh. It's a global threat to which we have to have a global response. And the meeting in Paris, where the European Union, myself, was present, not for the military side, but for the humanitarian, development and political side, the main point of the meeting in Paris was unity, unity of purpose and coordination, listening to the Iraqi government and finding ways to move forward in Syria, because we need to solve the problem where it was starting, which is the Syrian crisis itself. I believe that on our side, for what concerns the European Union, our role is to more and more work for stabilizing the liberated areas, so that wherever Daesh is pulled back, people can go back to their homes in security and safety with basic services that make their life a little bit easier, a little bit better. Water, electricity, schools, health services, basic things that make that difference, that can encourage or convince a young person, a young woman, a child, that life under normal circumstances is much better than under Daesh. This is the starting point from our European perspective. We need to make life worthwhile and good in the normal setting. And in this respect, we're working very much with the rest of the international community but most of all with the Iraqi government for an inclusive process. They have to feel, as the international community is united, that also the Iraqis can be united. Sunni, Shia, Kurds, all together, because at the end of the day, this would be the best option for their own people's future.
Now, European leaders have expressed outrage over Moscow's decision to ban 89 EU officials from entering Russia. We're talking about senior members of the European Parliament, the Secretary General of the European Council, a former British Deputy Prime Minister. Is this a new provocation from Moscow?
I don't know. And the fact that we don't know exactly what this list is part of the problem. You know, I've seen similarities described in the media about this list and our sanctions. Our sanctions are taken on a basis of legal procedures, fully transparent. The people are notified in advance. They can appeal the decision. There is a transparent and public process. You know why, who, where, and when these people are sanctioned.
This came out of the blue?
This is communicating a list of names, but we don't have any further information on why, when, and how the procedure goes. So I would say completely two different things. Having said that, the situation with Russia stays tense, but I would also like to say we have open channels of dialogue on the Ukrainian crisis. European Union is facilitating the trilateral talks, EU, Ukraine and Russia, on two key areas. One is energy and gas, and we know this is very important for Ukraine, for Russia, but also for the European Union, and on the implementation of our free trade agreement. And we keep a constructive partnership with Russia on some global issues, the Iranian talks, for instance, or the Middle East peace process. If we work for the two-state solution in the Middle East, it's also with the Russians in that system of the UN and the Quartet, or other dossiers, Syria, we mentioned before, or big issues like climate change or counterterrorism. So there is a level of tension, for sure. There is a level of commitment that we ask more when it comes to the implementation of the Minsk agreements and finding a solution, a peaceful solution to the Ukrainian crisis. But there are also channels open for cooperation, and we wish this could go more and more in that direction rather than in the direction of confrontation.
Well, later this month, EU leaders will meet in Brussels to decide whether to extend the sanctions against Russia. In your view, have these sanctions worked?
They have worked economically, for sure. Russia is suffering for different reasons, not only the sanctions. The fall of the oil prices, for sure, plays a role in that. But the sanctions is something that is hurting. And we are not happy about imposing sanctions. We believe that a cooperative relationship would be much better for all. And we clearly said, all the member states have said, the heads of state and government have said, we are ready to lift the sanctions once the Minsk agreement is fully implemented. And we wish this could happen soon. But until this will not be the case, sanctions are going to stay.
You mentioned Iran back in April. You played a very key role in the meeting between Iran, Europe, its other partners, the United States, of course. We know the deadline for a possible deal. It's the end of the month. I don't want to ask you how optimistic you are, but are you hopeful at least that we'll get a deal, and how important?
We're working hard. To me, the key is not optimism or pessimism, it's working hard. Working hard to achieve an agreement, to achieve a good agreement that can make it not possible for Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, so contributing to peace and stability and security of the region, non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. This is going to be extremely important, but also at the same time an agreement that can be beneficial for the Iranian people and for Iran as a country to open up to the rest of the world, to play a different role in the region, a more constructive one. We need it. Also, Iran probably needs a more stable and less conflictual region. This is an opportunity for all of us. It's, as you said, a multilateral negotiation, a very complicated and difficult one, starting in the framework of the UN Security Council resolution that gives me, as a High Representative, the role of facilitating the talks. We are now finalizing the texts. So it's the final phase of defining the details, which is the most delicate and complicated ones. But I see the political will on all sides, all the sides involved, to reach a good, solid and strong agreement. And I'm quite confident that we can make it.
And finally, you're at the helm of the European diplomacy. Europe has two military powers, essentially, Britain and France. We know that Britain does not want to build a European defence system. Is this a problem, and will we ever have a European army?
You know, we already have today military operations and missions. We have 7,000 European Union men and women acting in military operations and missions of the EU with the European Union flag. And this is something that we have decided at 28, including the UK. This is to say that we already have now some of the tools that make of the European Union a defense and security provider in the world. And this is something beneficial for all the 28 member states. So if you ask me about the perspectives from here to, I don't know, 20, 30 years, that's maybe a little bit too much to foresee. But what I can say is that from here to the end of my mandate, 5 years' time, 4 years and a half now, I think we have to use all the instruments that we have today at full, also when it comes to defense and security, because this is the interest of all the European Union citizens. The world is too dangerous and too complicated today for any of our member states to deal with the threats that are out there all alone. We need to use our strength in common.
High Representative Mogherini, I really want to thank you for having found the time to talk to us in your very busy agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you.